All righty. I'm sure we'll still have some folks coming late, a few moments late to the game, but we don't want to take too much time before we get started because this month's topic is a big one. We're really excited to have our kind of reoccurring guest panelist back today, Dr. David Bateman, who is local, and Dr. Sean Smith, tuning in all the way from Kansas. Welcome back, gentlemen. Just a few housekeeping reminders. Again, we will take attendance towards the end of the session. And Dr. Bateman and Dr. Smith both have slides that they'll be flipping back and forth from together. We will be making those made publicly available through our shared notes doc. And later this week, a recording of this session, as well as accessible PDFs of the materials used today, will be posted as well to that shared notes doc and our Schoology course. So if I'll hand it over to you, gentlemen, kick us off. And I'm really excited to dig into one of our big fundamental areas of UDL today.
Okay. All right. Thank you. This is David Bateman. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to share my screen so that I can get the information out to everyone as a part of this. But just give you some strategies for engagement that we want to talk about, and we appreciate this. Before I go any further, though, I just want to highlight the fact that I can't thank all of you enough for what you're doing to provide services for kids with disabilities and their parents. We're going to talk a little bit about both during the course of the next hour, but I just really appreciate all that you're doing, and the fact that many of you are, for lack of a better term, ping-ponging between online and working face-to-face, and then trying to figure out what's going on, is that it's affecting your jobs and affecting what's going on, but it's affecting kids with children eligible for special education and their families. So I just want to thank you very, very, very much for what you're doing, and just let you know that it's much appreciated. And as I'm watching my daughter, she's working as a classroom technician for Vista Autism Services right now, and just watching what she's going through, just kind of wanting desperately to be face to face with some of these kids, but also periodically enjoying the mute button on these things. So it's interesting about this. So we're going to start talking with a variety of strategies.
And David, we can't see your screen just yet. So FYI.
You can't see my screen? I apologize. Yeah. I appreciate the heads up on that. I thought I'd share it. So let me go back to that.
There we go.
Much better. I think you just kind of froze up for a second, buddy, but you look looking good now.
Thank you. So yes, I'm the local one. My name's David Bateman. I'm at Shippensburg University, and I appreciate the heads up on that. So, but we're going to talk about things. So you're going to see me, my slides for a few minutes, and we're going to go to Dr. Smith's slides, and we're just going to go back and forth, just kind of talk about this. But we really appreciate what you're doing. So first thing I'm going to talk about is resilience, and just the fact that as you have been going back and forth from, as I said, with ping pong between working face to face and working in schools, is that students are going back and forth, and it's tough on them as they're trying to do this. So one thing is, and as we were talking as we were getting ready to this, is it's been almost a year since we started the pandemic stuff, what we refer to as the before times. If you remember back to last January, we did not have any expectations or ideas that something like this is going to be happening. And then in March, everything hit. And so I like the before times, and I want to get back to them. But it's really interesting about this. But we need to teach our kids how to still stay resilient as a part of this, because it's wearing thin. It's wearing thin, and people are getting tired of this. And so what we have to think about is what we can do to be of assistance so that we can provide help with them as a part of this. So the first thing is we need to help kids and just help them learn to help build better resilience. Is we need to help them with this. And we need to pay attention to this and just adapt to where we are with this, and just understand what's going on with this, and realize that things are going to change. And we're going to have to be they're going to have to be part of this change, and that we're going to have to adapt to where we're going with this. It's not an easy task. It's not an easy task because there's some kids, as you know, do not like change. There's some kids who do very well with change, but we have to think about where we go with this. So what was the first tip we can do is model adaptability. Just truly model adaptability. And I mean this, is to emphasize, again, we're all in this together. That we're all in this together, and this is something that we're all facing. It's not just against them. There's nothing against them. It's nothing against their family. It's nothing against what they're doing. But we also remind them that it's temporary. This is a temporary situation, things like this. It's good. We're going to be back to what we refer to as the after times, is at some point we're going to all be back together and things like this. It's just we're all experiencing this. But emphasize also not giving up. That I'm seeing some serious COVID fatigue from some of the kids and from some of the teachers as I talk with teachers in districts about this. But be wary of this. Is that we have to emphasize this. Is that we just have to model adaptability for them as a part of this. But also pay attention. The students have serious feelings on this. They have serious feelings where they're feeling stressed and they need to think about what we can do to make it through the course of the day. Honor those feelings, pay attention to those feelings, and pay attention to what's going on, right? But anyways, we talk about this is not every situation is covered in the training manual. And I can't emphasize this enough, is that I've written I work with many school districts and helped review their training manuals as their teachers are getting ready to provide services for kids with disabilities. We didn't do a lot of online stuff, but it's going to be a big part of what we're talking about this. I mean, the attitudes we have towards IEP meetings now, flexibility, the attitudes we have towards a meeting with parents outside of school, the fact that many of us are much more conversant with Zoom than we probably want to be. It's all part of the flexibility that we've had to be part of this, okay? So what can we do for kids? What can we do for kids? Well, the first thing is be predictable. Just be predictable as much as possible. And really, be predictable, okay? Remind students about the behavioral and academic expectations that they're going to be. So just keep the expectations. Be expectations, but also keep them that what we have to think about this is the expectations, keep them consistent. And just to let you know that the federal government is looking in through, like, for instance, in Indiana yesterday, you can Google the Indiana Star newspaper. The Office of Civil Rights is looking at how school districts are treating kids eligible for special education. There are some perceptions that it's a one-size-fits-all model. One thing that, yes, we need to be predictable, but we have to make all of our decisions for kids eligible for special education based on their individual needs and make sure that we provide that. So keep that in mind. Schedules are important. And we've talked previously about the importance of keeping documentation relating to schedules. Many of us have become very, very good about documenting efforts to Zoom with parents, who's there, what's going on. We need to make sure that we continue to be very close to this and pay attention to schedules. But also think about ways of getting help so that we can provide this part of this. So keep that in mind as we talk about this, right? And remember, 2020, everything changed January 1st. The whole world is so much better now that it's 2021. It's incredible how different the world is. And so we were all so excited that it's 2021. Everything's going to improve. Everything's different. There's not going to be big news this week like our last week, just so everything's better. But keep that in mind as we talk about this. But also, I just want to remind you about this, okay? As we talk about resilience, is that emotions are real, very, very real. I mean, we're looking for us all to have something that's going to solve our problems, and is either in the news, where many of us are anxious about what's going on. We need coping tools to help with where we are with this. We need to help with this and help find coping tools. But also, we talked about this previously, and I can't emphasize this enough, is you need to pay very close attention to kids who are not making it as a part of your child find obligations. So please strongly implore your general education colleagues to pay attention to the kids who are having the problems, having the issues, and make sure that you provide supports for them as a part of this. But the emotions are real for all teachers also. I really do mean this. All teachers, things like this. And teachers and students. I mean, we'll talk later about that. Teachers are having problems. I'm Zooming with a teacher after this who's now has to be tested because of exposure in the past few days. And the very reality of this and how we're addressing this. But also the issues that families are having as about emotions. And I've got an interesting story. I've got a good friend whose daughter's not eligible for special education, but their daughter's 8 years of age. While my good friend was getting out of the shower the other day, her daughter brought in the laptop to the bathroom and said, "Mommy, I have some questions about my math assignment. Can you help me?" And that's typically what the kid would do, was historically, but it was going on. And so the girl turns the laptop to show the mom, who's coming out of the shower, not wearing any clothes. And the mom, my friend, yells, "Why do you have the laptop in here?" "Well, this is my Zoom class, but don't worry, it's on mute," which is not exactly completely what we needed. So luckily, since it was on mute, it did not share all the verbiage that the mother yelled at the daughter about. But there was, and luckily it wasn't being recorded, but I think there's images now of my friend getting out of a shower in some people's minds. But the emotions are very real, and we need to pay attention to this and address these kinds of things. And finally, about resilience, is we need to teach the kids how to solve problems. Really, seriously, how to solve problems. Emphasize solutions, emphasize creativity in how we're doing these things. Are there other ways to do things? And so what I'm looking at this, and it's really interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is I'm working with directors of special education who are going into homes to help set up Wi-Fi's, Wi-Fi routers or hotspots, and trying to determine where the best place is for these spots to be used. And they're decking out that we're going above and beyond what we historically thought we needed to do. And it's just trying to solve the problems. No longer, and I'll talk about this in a little while, no longer are we saying this doesn't work, so therefore we're giving up. So one thing we have to pay attention to is how can we solve the problems so that the kids actually can participate, that we're documenting their participation, and we're monitoring where we are with this. And so keep this in mind as we address these issues and things like this. And finally, before I turn it over to Dr. Smith, is that school pictures this year are going to look a lot like this. I wish we could take better school pictures, but this is the reality of the situation. So keep this in mind as we talk about this. All right. So let me get back to this, and I'll stop sharing my screen and let Dr. Smith turn it over to him. Yep.
All right. So I'm just going to get a confirmation from David, because you're still on mic, that you can see this. So can I get a confirmation, David, that you can see this?
I can. Yes.
Looking good.
All right, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back for those that have been with us in the past, and hello for those that are new to this. As Sarah mentioned earlier, Sean Smith, no, not Michael J. Fox, but Sean Smith here at the University of Kansas in the Department of Special Education, and like David, working with a lot of districts and states prior to COVID on remote, online, blended learning, and since COVID, doing the same. And so I wanted to kind of, we're going to go back and forth a bit. So you're going to be with me for about 10 more minutes, and then we'll get back to David here. But I have this up here for two different reasons. One is earlier in Patton, we talked a little bit about engagement. So I'm going to do a little reinforcing on a framework that Sarah actually mentioned right as we were launching, and that's UDL. So I'm going to mention that in terms of engagement as a reinforcer, but also I'm going to have this image up here because, you know, I'm always looking prior to COVID for lessons that we were applying that apply still within the pandemic and all the different challenges we're facing in terms of remote, hybrid, et cetera, et cetera. So with that said, where I'm going with this is the fact that when we think about engagement, I want to reinforce, I'm going to get into some solutions in just a moment, but I cannot stop and not reinforce what Kavita reinforced back in the December, if you were with us, on the Universal Design for Learning framework, particularly in the area of engagement. Why? Because engagement offers UDL offers a wonderful framework and a series of steps, scaffolds, ideas, checkpoints, what to do for engagement. And yes, many of these align directly to technology solutions that we could then use to further engage. So I want to, as a reminder for those of us who have been with us and those of us who have not, when we think about engagement and we think about the framework, and if you're unfamiliar with the framework, this is hyperlink, folks. So you will get a link to this presentation. I've given it to you in Google Slides. Everything in terms of resource-wise are hyperlinked. And so as you do with your students, so feel free to click here. It'll take you to the UDL framework, teach you more about it, et cetera, et cetera. Reinforcing, though, that we want to not only recruit interest, and there's a lot of solutions and technologies that we can do that, but we also, as many of us are doing, we want to build persistence. So we go from bicycling and them riding behind us to them pedaling with a little guidance of us, those training wheels, to finally getting to a level of their own self-regulation. And there's tools that do a variety of these things. So I share that with you as our map, as our path, as our guidance, things that we've been doing prior, the framework's been out there prior to the pandemic, and the ways to integrate this framework into solutions for the pandemic as we continue to really work with the dealing of engaging our students. And please know I'm believing this on a daily basis as well, not only engaging my children that are in school. I've got a high schooler fully online. I've got a child with a disability that's pretty much remote when it comes to some of the work he's doing right now in terms of learning. He'll be at the University of Kansas next year, but he's doing a lot of other type of learning right now. And then of course, the students I work with, who are current teachers as well as future teachers, and we're trying to engage in both face-to-face, hybrid, and remote learning. All right, and this is a more thorough version of what the UDL framework offers us in terms of some of that structure for overall engagement ideas. So with that said, there are ways to take that. Maybe some of you are looking at that saying, theoretical, not helping me tomorrow, Sean. Well, great. There's top 10 rules for engagement. For those who have been with me in the past, I always reinforce this with engagement. These are ways to take that framework and bring it into what's my David Letterman top 10, for those of us that remember David Letterman. Now, this is hyperlinked to not only the top 10 rules, but Idaho, the state of Idaho gave examples of bringing each of these into play. And if we had a little bit more time, I would give you illustrations for each of those. I'm working on that, and that's going to be up under schoolvirtually.org. That's a resource I want to make sure that you're aware of. It's a footer down there. Please take a look at there's lots of different ideas that we have there, particularly UDL and engagements there as well. But anyways, these are ideas prior to the pandemic, which were ways to take the framework and engage our learners. And of course, how do we do that with digital technical tools? Some examples are sitting there online on schoolvirtually.org. I'm going to try to illustrate some as well. So the number 6 through 10, in addition, again, ways to facilitate it from a plan design and again, utilizing the framework. So I leave that there for you as some suggestions. Again, schoolvirtually.org has some ways to facilitate these ideas with the UDL framework and engagement and technology. So take a look at that and let me give you some more. So the first one I want to deal with before I have my time let up for this first section is we know if we can get our students to collaborate with each other, be it socially at a distance, remotely, or both, depending upon some students maybe socially at a distance and some remotely connecting, collaboration is a key. It's a key. We know that's very successful for levels of engagement. Well, how do we do it, Sean? Lots of different ways. Google Slides is one. It's my go-to, and many of us are already doing it, but Google Slides to me offers so many different options for that collaboration. One, as many of us are already doing, we're creating slides that are a template that offer our directions. We might put videos of ourselves explaining what you want on that slide. We might put text, we might put images, we might do all three, and then students can then get on, listen to us when they want to listen to us or when they're able to listen to us. It doesn't have to be synchronous. And then they can delete our directions and put in their own materials. So that independently is cool, right? And there's lots of features and supports that allow for speech to text, things of that nature. But the beautiful thing about the collaboration is then I can get on synchronously with one of my peers and we can be interacting. We don't even need to be on Zoom to do it. And we can making changes and things of that nature based on the directions that the teacher has provided. But I could also go on after the fact and see what a peer of mine, Jose offered the following, Marie offered the following, Sean did this. I can go on and add my additions. And then the teacher, of course, can watch and give feedback just in time for that formative aspect, which is very engaging in terms of that responding. And so all that is very, very powerful. So that's Google Slides. Now, there's also a lot of interactive whiteboards out there. Many of us are probably using Explain Everything. Now, I'm going to go ahead and escape out of this, continue to share my screen, but Explain Everything is an interactive blank whiteboard. Has lots of different features, right? I can take my markers and I can draw here. I can add in images, existing images. I can go ahead and grab those. I can do all sorts of different things here. There's my wife and I when we were younger. Okay, I'm not sure why that's sitting there, but there we go. All right, so we can do all sorts of different things in an interactive whiteboard. Think of our interactive whiteboard apps we have. Well, how's this collaborative, Sean? Well, I can click up here under Invite, if I have the right version of Explain Everything, and I click on invite, and then I can invite others to join me synchronously. So they can come on at the same time, and we can be from afar interacting, collaborating, making things. And oh, by the way, what I love about Explain Everything is internally it can record what we're doing, and we can send it off to the teacher to see how we collaborated, to see what we created, and go on and on from there. So this is one of several that does it. Now, Jamboard offers something similar. Some of us are using Jamboard. Oh, I don't want that to play, so go ahead and cancel on that. So Jamboard, I have a link to Jamboard that is hyperlinked off our presentation, and I just want you to know it's to a video, and I'll go back to the presentation. But Jamboard also offers that interactive whiteboard feature, and in that allowing for the interaction I'm talking about. Initially, it's just simply a interactive whiteboard, but again, it offers the ability to collaborate in real time for the different users for their engagement purposes. And of course, for our purposes, from a UDL, which I'm even going to go beyond that with engagement, it allows us to allow the students to demonstrate what they know in a variety of different ways. Okay, and of course, Jamboard can connect with Google Classroom, and the list goes on. Padlet's another tool. Padlet, many of us are using. Padlet's a great tool for so many different resources. I am going to escape out of here as well and pop over to Padlet. You know, Padlet, of course, allows us to create walls, canvases, shelves, to organize information for students, right? So for example, I could create a World War I bank. And this is something that Kavita was reinforcing if you were with us in December about how to organize information and represent information for students. Well, how is this collaborative, Sean? Well, in all the various components of Padlet, for example, the wall, students can get on there synchronously and interact and make changes and make additions all at once. Or of course, they can come back when they have the link. Someone can do it at 10 a.m., someone else can make a change at 11 a.m., etc. And of course, we can pop back in as instructors and see what they're doing. We can offer tips, we can offer ideas. When they're done with our tips and ideas, they can delete our tips and ideas, and they have the rest of the interactive whiteboard for themselves. That's Padlet. So many of these features are out there for our students. We just create, and then they can collaborate. So it's a great way to engage them. And of course, video, there's a number of different video tools that allow for that live interaction as well, or that partial interaction, and that I can do it over time, that again allows us to collaborate and therefore allows us to be engaged at a high level. So with that's my 10 minutes, we're gonna go back to David, and I'm gonna stop sharing, and back to you, David.
Thanks, Sean, and I appreciate that. I wish I'd seen the whole video though. So, all right. Let me just get to here. All right, and let me know if you guys can see. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And just remind you that for those of you who don't know me, what I do is I work with school districts when they have been sued, and I was a hearing officer for many years in the Commonwealth, and now I haven't been involved in a lawsuit since about 11:30 this morning, so I'm on a hiatus. Well, probably because I'm not answering my phone. But it's interesting about this is what I look at this is and we have to think about special education as a field that is defined by a law. That I look at this from probably a very different perspective, but you have to realize is that you have to pay attention to the needs legally and make sure that what we're doing is crossing the T's and dotting the I's, making sure the kids are making progress, but also addressing the students' individual needs. So what I'm going to give you some suggestions here, and some of these you'll think about as a part of this is, yes, you're going to be putting these things. I strongly encourage you to pay attention to the links that we're providing for you and all that wonderful information there. But I also strongly encourage you is that next Tuesday, and Sarah will talk about this at the end, is to take advantage of the office hours, where they will come up, be willing to talk about questions that you have as a part of this. And give us guidance and feedback about things that we'll be pay attention to as we've covered them. So just there's resources out there. And also just to applaud Patan for putting these things on, because I work with a number of states as part of their training efforts just in the past week, who I've told them about this, and they said, what a great idea. We should do that, but it's too late to get it going right now. So because it's an issue. So keep this in mind as we talk about this. But I want to talk about anxiety. And I want to talk about what we can do to help with kids who have anxiety issues. We have seen a dramatic increase and the number of kids who have had issues relating to anxiety. If you've been regular followers of this workshop, you realize that was it 2 months ago, we had Dr. Eric Rosen from the National Association of School Psychologists come in and talk about issues relating to this. He came in when my screen went blank. He did a great job with this. He and I do regular workshops across the nation. We have a book that just came out together that we wrote. And so but it's anxiety is an issue that we have to pay attention to. So I just want to emphasize how very, very important this is as an issue, and address this as an issue. Okay, so but dealing with student anxiety. First,
hey David, could you
yes.
refresh your camera real quick? And you kind of froze up for a second.
I'll see what I can do. Okay.
There we go. We're back at it now. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Can you see me now, Sarah?
Yeah. Slides look like they're better. And yeah,
okay.
We're good.
All right,
sorry for
thanks.
the interruption.
That's okay. I'm downhill from you, so that's things got to fly uphill to get to you. So I appreciate the extra work we have to have here. I'm in Carlisle, so yeah, so it's all downhill. So first step, if you notice any kid is having any issues relating to anxiety, is I communicate and talk with the parents, just to be mindful of any concerns that the students raised or anything that parents may have noticed. Parents have had to step in as a part of this process. I give you the example of my friend getting out of the shower. They've stepped in, but I really do want to emphasize is that we need to pay attention to what the parents are seeing. So determine whether this is something that's really an issue or something we need to pay attention to, or something that's maybe just a fleeting thing. So keep that in mind. Second one is it bordering on a child find issue? And this is an issue that we need to pay attention to about this. Some of these kids may have had a Section 504, Chapter 15 service agreement prior to this, back in the before times. But now, are they really needing instructional supports? Meaning the second part of the two-part test for eligibility is a child find issue. So do we need to do an evaluation, or are there kids who are starting to regress so much and that they're becoming anxious about what's going on? Do we need to do a reevaluation and determine, do they need to be bumped up from the itinerant to the supplemental level? And so it's issues like this, but we need to keep these things in mind and pay attention very carefully to where we are with this. Third, okay, do we need to think about changing the IEP? I'm cautious about changing things on the IEP because it has to be based on the student's needs. The present levels dictate everything. And it's the student's present levels, not what we have available for the kid to provide services. Are there things that we need to pay attention to and things that we need to address and support for the kids? So one thing that I want to emphasize is maybe the kid's IEP needs to be changed, but make sure you base this on evaluative data, observations from the teachers, and it clearly is dictated by the kid's present levels, not based on about what we're providing for the kid. And seriously, if I come to your school district and I find out that it's based on solely what you're providing, not based on the kid's needs, and the parents have followed us, we're going to settle that sucker. There's no reason to go forward because it's indefensible. So keep that in mind as a part of this. But make sure that it's based on the child's needs and we provide the supports necessary about this. Okay. We did talk a little bit about trauma, and we spent some time talking about trauma. And I want to spend just a few minutes talking about it, but is that and Dr. Rosen talked about this 2 months ago, is that the adverse child experiences, or ACEs, is something that many of these kids probably could check because they know someone who's had COVID. They've known someone who's been sick. They know someone who's been ill, things like this. And speaking as someone as myself, I've had COVID and see that I'm on the other side of it now. The issues that we've had is our family is a part of this. It was very, very intense. It was a rough couple of weeks here. Many of these kids have experienced these things. And so we're having to think about this, but we have to be really cautious about this. One thing that I see when I talk about trauma is I can't emphasize this enough, is that when we write IEP goals, we need to make sure that we're writing them so that they show benefit to the kid, and not just something the kid can make progress, not just on compliance things. So if the kid is sulking or causing too many demands on you, we don't write a goal so that the kid will no longer bother the teacher. We write a goal that teaches the kid appropriate strategies. I can't emphasize that enough. Too many of these goals I see written, I'm recommending the school districts quickly settle those cases, is where they write the goal and it's a compliance goal. Kid will stop raising their hand. Kid will stop talking out. kid will stay in their seat. And so I often refer to those, and people have had me for class before know I refer to those as dead man goals. If a dead person can do them, then they're and have success according to how you're written, they're not good goals. So keep that in mind. Anxiety also, as we talk about this, make sure we take data about this. And we have data as a part of this, so we have some sense of what's going on. We have some sense about what is the kid responding? What are they specifically saying? What are their issues? What are they raising to us that's important? So I can't emphasize this enough that we pay close attention to what we're doing as a part of this, that we're using data to make informed decisions about where we are with this. Because you can't keep kids focused unless you have them dealing with their anxious issues. But also, yes, I've gone crazy on exclamation points. I've written multiple books and not used a single exclamation point, and used 2 on this slide alone. Keep in contact with the kids. Keep in contact with the kids so that we have sense of where they are. Keep in contact with the family. We'll talk more later about keeping in contact with the family and going to where they are, but pay attention to this. But also, so keep in mind is we need to address these issues. I'm raising these issues because you can't just say the kid is anxious, we're going to stop doing things. We need to think about what is our next step. We need, and you've heard me say this before, we need to keep trying. We need to keep trying. And maybe we need to pull in mental health providers as a part of this, okay? And mental health providers might be able to provide additional assistance and supports for where we are with this. What are we doing as a part of this to provide assistance? And does it rise to the level of performing mental health providers and bringing them in? And last, just see. And those of you who are BCBA trained, you understand exactly where I'm getting this from. Is as my daughter's going through her BCBA training, I'm going through it again with her. What are the overriding problems? Are there triggers? What are the antecedent events that seem to be causing the anxiety issues as a part of this? I can't emphasize this enough. Try to figure out what's what is really causing these issues, and then pay very close attention to these as we address these. This is vital. This is vital, and we need to address these issues and pay attention to these. Anxiety is something that is rightfully kids are anxious, rightfully teachers are anxious, rightfully parents are anxious, because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you've heard me say this before. We all knew we could live with this last March. We could get to Memorial Day. We didn't know it was going to be this Memorial Day. We thought it was last year's Memorial Day. So when we talk about the issues, we pay attention to this. Keep these in mind as we talk about this. All right. So I'm going to go back to have Dr. Smith take over and go from there. All right.
Great. Thank you, David, or Dr. Bateman, but thank you, David. All right. So if I could get confirmation that things are being shared again, that would be awesome.
All good.
Thank you, Sarah. So what I'm going to try to do now, folks, this is the last pivot for me. So I'm going to try to do as much as I can to get you thinking. Again, this is in a Google Google presentation, so slideshow. So it's all available to you. But let's go through 10 quick things with some technology tools to consider, with the understanding that schoolvirtually.org has a whole list of things, particularly in engagement, UDL, technology ideas. Of course, get to know our students. Sean, that was an August, September thing. Well, to me, getting to know my students, I'm constantly getting to know my students when it comes to, I'm asking them to do something a little bit different based on this content. The content's shifting a bit, the units changed, the subunits changed, the next series of lessons are going to alter. I'm introducing a new technology. Why? Because I've been introduced to it and I want to try it. So what does that mean? Of course, the family dynamics, things go on and on and on. I'm constantly trying to get to know my students through a variety of different tools. I'm not going to concentrate on those since many of us are already there. Of course, we're creating schedules. Can't reinforce that enough. Let me go into a little bit more detail with that, especially as we've pivoted. We're coming into the new year. Many of us, it's still maybe the same semester, still the same quarter. Maybe we've gone to another quarter, but the schedules continue to be really, really critical for that level of engagement. And so with that thought in mind, there's many different ways we can use what we have, but also what we need to do. There's guidance in terms of the schedules we can create. And of course, lots of different reasons to create schedules, right? Everything from the visual schedules to communicate, to help with transitions. So with that thought in mind, just want to reinforce, continue to go back to our LMSs. I use Blackboard and Canvas. And I uncovered over the holidays some options within Canvas. Now, maybe you are using Seesaw or Google Classroom or things of that nature, but I uncovered some options that are going to be a time saver for me, not only being able to date out reminders, which I'm doing right now that will happen throughout the semester for me, but also messages to a variety of different individuals. I can do that, personalize it, and organize it for the entire group as well. It's going to be an awesome time saver, but it's also going to allow me to communicate more regularly with my students, which of course is so critical for that engagement, right? We feel connected, we feel interacted. And I'm finding out with the tools I have, I can do it beyond just text. I'm audio recording some things. I'm using some images I was unaware of that I can make connections with within my learning management system. So I urge you to consider that. All right, now, there's some, I'm going to use Google Classroom because it's fairly universal out there, widely used. Google Classroom has some awesome opportunities for calendar functions and how to connect with our students. And I'm going to reinforce later our parents. And of course, David is going to finish off with a connection back to our families and our adult caregivers at home. But there's a video for your leisure in terms of connecting there. All right, I don't want to get into that right now. The other element, as I was just mentioning, is there's ways to, and this is one of those, gosh, I have a little time. Yeah, right, Sean, when do I have that time? But if we deep dive, like I was saying over the holiday, I realized there's some additional features that offer those automatic reminders, time savers for me, connectors for the students, and of course, for the parents, so the parents can stay on schedule as well, or the adult in the home can stay on schedule to know the expectations, et cetera, to be able to reminder. I live on Google Classroom for my daughter to remind her about, wait a minute here, you've got this time, you've got this to be prepped before over here. What about this assignment over here? I think the first month she thought I was a mind reader and then realized, of course, I had access as well. All right, now there's lots of different ways also to organize for color and other ways that were basic visual schedule components. And I'm going to get to that in just a moment, but don't forget that your LMSs and other calendar functions you're using offer those features, utilize those features, because again, back to the future, prior to COVID, a lot of research on visual schedules, many of us are still using it. Of course, let's use the technical tools that allow us to further some of those visual schedules. All right, another link in terms of using Google Calendar to reinforce how to do things, but also task lists. So how to, right, in terms of how to facilitate something, but also task lists for those checklists, check-ins, things of that nature. Many of our LMSs feature that as well. So that, yep, got that one. Yep, got that. Oh, that's still down the list. Oh, I've color-coded it, or you color-coded it for me, teacher. Thank you. Again, there's another video link to that off our presentation. All right, so with visual schedules, of course, separate from the LMSs, there's a bunch out there. I've hyperlinked to a number here, everything from choice to the visual schedule off of Good Karma and a number of other tools. I think this one links to Common Sense Media, which lists a number of different ones. But remember, many of these offer the embedded videos, the embedded pictures, the embedded objects, the embedded images that are relevant to the learner, and having them use those, of course, that's more empowerment, that's more self-regulation. But it's also a way to further engage, because then they know what they need to be doing. They know when they've done it. They know when they need to do it. They know that they've done it. Check off, transition, the list goes on. Okay, so by the way, I'm using this as a side, but this is a hyperlink. This is a phenomenal report prior to COVID that talks about ways to personalize learning and further empower individuals to further engage them through choice making, through scheduling, through organizing, through some of that structure. It's aligned to individuals with more challenging needs. It's a great report. It's like a 2-pager for each idea, real basic stuff, but really critical stuff if you want more of that map and that conceptualization. All right, so visual schedules and the like also offer roadmaps and transitions, right? We know this when we're face-to-face with our learners and the like. We need schedules and prompts so the student knows not only what to be doing, but when they're done, right? That helps with engagement. That helps with reducing behavior challenges. The list goes on. So with that in mind, remember the schedules we create can facilitate with the family what is due, and the list of things goes on. So the coach at home can help us by us helping them, right? In terms of those reminders, they can then put it in their own schedules. They can put it on their own walls, whatever they need to do. I know many of us have been doing it, but that's where we want to ramp it up for some of back at home to help them be more empowered to help their children. And of course, at the end of the day, help us, right? To meet the needs of their learners. I can't leave this one tip without saying this is evidence-based. Well, evidence-based, Sean. Well, it's effective. Therefore, it's going to be effective and efficient with our time, right? We only have so much time. We only have so many days. Might as well go with something that works. And visual schedules work not only to help our learners, but to engage our learners as well. So I can't reinforce that enough. Oh, and by the way, if you're like, well, Sean, I want to know more about that scholarship. Hey, I have hyperlinks here to take you to a couple different links that talk about visual schedules and the research behind them and the features that are critical to make them effective. All right, number 3, I'm moving along here. Got to get back to David. Number 3, small group. Lots of different ways many of us are doing this. You know, we're using breakout rooms. We're using different collaborative tools, as we mentioned earlier in my earlier segment, to be able to small groups so they can feature that collaboration, so they can interact to further enhance collaboration. Continue to play and try some of those. If you've failed in the past with some of those, maybe it was due to the how-to component, maybe it was due to some other pressures, you know, those breakout rooms and other things like that to personalize do have some value, but also looking at other materials out there that allow to personalize. You know, as many of us are already using, our content management systems do organize for that individualized component. Thing goes on, and we'll just leave that, okay, in terms of small group. Reinforcement. Many of us are providing reinforcement in a variety of different ways. So, Sean, what are some digital tools that we can think about that? Well, if you were with me earlier, we talked about assessment in the fall. Well, data walks are critical. So the data that we're collecting that we talked about prior in all our systems, our LMSs, our content management systems, some of the digital tools that we're using, they have that data available to us. Well, with that and with the form of assessments we're doing, conduct data walks with our students. And there's a great link here that walks you through data walks and how we can do that in various digital tools, but also at home, but also in the building. If we're socially distanced in the building, make sure we're using our data walls. It's a great way to visualize, personalize where our students are. And if appropriate and clean, have the students go up to their digital wall and update that, their data wall, and update that. And by the way, if you're from remote, you can always create one in your school. If you're in the classroom and they're all at home, you can create one and continue to do that individually when the data walk you're doing with students, or globally. The other thing is you can help mom or dad, the adult, create one at home for the students. Very motivating, very reinforcing. And of course, there's a hyperlink to use the formative assessment tools as well. Okay, so that's awesome in terms of reinforcement. Now, I can't I gotta remind you, these are ideas coming from the framework, okay? All right, enough with the framework. Set expectations. Well, what do you mean, Sean? Well, YoTeach does a nice job of talking about making things really clear when it comes to digital tools. It's a digital tool that actually does that. So I'll let you take a look at that at your leisure. But also, you know, this might be a time to reset when it comes to some of that video conferencing in terms of the etiquette and expectations, both large and small group. But the other thing is there's a lot of tools out there, and I've hyperlinked folks to some of these tools that talk about the use of technology for a purpose, that talk about how, you know, we need to create some how-to components to make sure that they're using the digital technology the way we want them to use it to further engage them. That's an expectation. And why do I have UDL there? We got to make sure it's just not a checklist. It's just not a long list of text. It might be that we model a few things. It might be that we offer some illustrations and things of that nature so that we can reduce the how-to component and get them more being able to use that digital tool. And my expectation, folks, is we're continuing to introduce functions of digital tools we've used or additional digital tools due to, as David said, we may have been planning for this to end a few months earlier, half a year earlier, and we're realizing, oh, wait, we're still with this. Now, wait, what are some of the additional tools that we said maybe we'll take a time out on, but they're still really helpful? Now, with that, it could be the fact that we go back to, as I mentioned earlier, features that are sitting like in Google Classroom or Seesaw, et cetera, but also going back to some of those lists. There's 27 tech tools for teachers that was available. I think in October I saw that. There's a hyperlink to it. but we may go back to, and then if we are going to use those tools, make sure that we're reinforcing the how-tos. The students are competent in being able to use it so that the expectations they set, they're capable of being able to do it. And that may be the basic modeling, basic communication. Don't let the tech get in the way, and don't be afraid of using the tech because you feel that, oh, wait, the learning curve and all that. We're limiting options then for our learners in terms of who we're working with. All right, setting goals, of course, for the students to understand, visualize, et cetera. I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna get to these last four real quick. All right, now, altering ways to represent information is critical. Now, we, of course, there's barriers out there. There's barriers in terms of the remoteness. There's barriers in terms of some of the technology we're using. There's barriers in some of the materials and the content, et cetera. Being aware, designing around. There's ways that we need to design around for the preferences, the variability, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, Kavita, if you weren't with us, it's been recorded in December, walked us through lots of different ways to represent material in a variety of different ways, which would be great for furthering engagement. So what happened? Part of this didn't load. Oh, let me get out of here. Why didn't it load? Here we go. I've got lots of different things in here. I'm not gonna have time, so I'm gonna skip over here. There's some great resources here, folks. At least I think they're great resources when it comes to using video for multiple means of representation. And it's hyperlinked. I'm running out of time for David. So with that, I'll just leave that. It's there. It's a great way to represent information. Many of us are using video. I'm giving you further illustrations, giving you further tips and other technologies to use with the video. Number 8, though, with that engagement is continue to look at ways to gamify and to offer simulations. Many of us are doing it, lots of different tools. Of course, there's a few, but just to gamify offers a lot of opportunities for that engagement. We've talked about this. If you've been with me in the past, I'm always big on checklists, not only to identify what I need to do, but to complete what I have done. Exit tickets as reinforcement that, hey, this is great, getting able to give that formative feedback, being able for the instructor to know where the student is, to be able to adjust, therefore further engaging there, reinforcing, the list goes on. And finally, of course, as I was just indicating, that use of that formative feedback data, the automaticity of what we can use in digital tools for students to be able to work independently, but yet get that reinforcement, further engagement. It involves so much more than that. We video recorded that, I think, back in October as a session there. All right, so back to David to finish things off for us today.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate this. And I just want to remind people is that the amount of resources that we're putting forward, just the way we're having you think through things, hopefully will benefit you and hopefully provides appropriate services for kids with eligible for special education. I just also want to talk more a little bit here for a few minutes about strategies for supporting teachers and just making sure that teachers are paying attention to themselves. And I do have an article that I'm going to link to at the end that I'll tell you about that I highly recommend because we're having trouble in some of these districts getting teachers to provide services because either the sheer volume of teachers who are been exposed to COVID, who are quarantining, who are sick, things like this. There are some districts that are not able to open and they're not able to get substitutes in to provide services. So just these things like this. These are really basic, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time focusing on these, but I just want to emphasize that you need to think about yourself, because if you're not providing supports for yourself, and you're not able to make it through the day, you're not going to be able to provide supports for these kids. So make sure that you have healthy habits, you have connections with others, that you're doing some form of exercise, and not just changing the remote to go from one Netflix show to another. But just you have connections with others, but also just set boundaries. Many of us as we're working from home are not setting boundaries. We're working 18, 20 hours a day. You really need to watch yourself and really pay very close attention to this and make sure that what you're doing is appropriate. Okay, but just allow some space at meetings, not just talk, but also a little bit of check-in. But don't kind of things like this. More strategies, real quick. Remember the before times. Just remember the before times and remember how good things were, and just kind of talk about this. There are some teachers who may need a break from what's going on. They may need to take a short break of where we are with this. There are some childcare considerations at home, support others that we need to address. There's a variety of things that we need to think about this, but make sure that the teachers are feeling supported. So as you see this, it is a very, very important issue, and we can't emphasize this enough. Okay, but also just supporting all staff, taking care of self. We need to make sure that we're doing regular mental health check-ins, that we're checking on family needs, we're checking on physical needs, some financial needs. Number of individuals who've lost jobs or been furloughed as a part of this, trouble making rent, things like this. What kind of support are we providing for our staff? Many people, as you are aware, live paycheck to paycheck, and not receiving a regular paycheck is causing them an incredible amount of anxiety. As you can see this in the kids' faces, and some of you have gone into the kids' homes have seen all this. Okay, more. It's not more support needs. It's not just a temperature check. As someone who has a side effect of COVID, long-term side effect of having cold extremities, things like this, it's not just a temperature check. It's a mental health check. We need to make sure we have this. The job of the leader is to create an environment where adults can work. Keep that in mind. That is your job, making sure that the leaders are emphasizing this. Yes, people are saying that we need to do other things. No, make sure that adults can do their jobs. Hold sessions with teachers and health departments to get questions and answers, help with paperwork, whatever is needed as a part of this. We need to do this as a part of it, to provide supports, but also emphasize the teams. Make sure there's a team member who can jump in when there's a concern. Make sure there's people out there that can provide supports, and make sure we have things going on this, okay? Just regularly check in with others. We've got to think about this as getting through this together and emphasize this. But this is the one thing I can't emphasize this enough. The two things that we want you to get out is the fact that Dr. Smith has provided you a whole bunch of great information. But one thing, as I'm seeing this, as I'm prepping school districts for litigation, if something is not working, try another way. There is no end result where something doesn't work. We're just going to try another way. Try another way. Keep saying that. Keep that as a mantra, and keep saying that, and keep emphasizing this. We got to pay attention to this. So keep that in mind as we talk about this. All right. Keep trying another way. All right. More on teaching. Okay. Just got to say it. All right. Okay. All right. Finally, we're going to talk about working with parents. Working with parents and trying to provide supports for them. Right. So one thing I want you to think about this. Yes, I gave you the story about my friend who was always showering, but working with parents, I want you to look at it from their view and pay attention to what they're seeing. And some of you are seeing this because you're being a parent in addition to being a teacher with kids at home. So you're seeing this, but there are teachers, we really need to pay attention to what's going on about this. So ask parents to provide feedback and give regarding how their child's experiences growth and things like this, but look at this from their view. Emphasize this, pay attention to this. Second, be stable, okay? Work with the parents to establish regular routines for the kids to be part of what's going on so that they can participate, they can be where they are, but needing to do this. And so they understand what they can do to expect this. Just be a stability function as a part of them, okay? Third, promote collaboration. Collaborate with them. Pay very, very close attention to the collaboration, which you can do. Invite parents to collaborate in any structured format like this. And I'm well aware that some parents are not available or do not want to collaborate. But when you can, get them to collaborate with what's going on so they're part of where we are with this. Okay. And just so it's a blended learning environment and we can pay attention to where we are with this and work with them as part of this. Okay. Next, remove distractions as much as possible. Yes, I know that some of these kids, the best Wi-Fi for them is in the front part of the house where the TV is on or people are coming and going, but do what you can to remove distractions and pay attention to this, but work very closely with them as a part of this and pay attention to this. Next, empower the parents. Work very closely with them and work on this. We'll have more on this next month, but pay attention to what we can do to empower the parents. And last two is be really important about communicating with the parents about what the expectations are. One of the things that has been breaking down is just communication. And so sometimes parents are not checking their email. They're not paying attention to what we're sending them. Letters, face-to-face kinds of things, knock on the doors, whatever we need to do, communicate with them as a part of what we need to do as a part of this. And so keep that in mind. But also just kind of revisit. If something's not working, figure out something that can be changed so that it works next time. Just constantly revisiting this so that you continue to keep trying. Continue to keep trying to pay attention to this. Okay, two things. All right, COVID rates after school openings. Pulled this up just before we logged on. Incidence rates after school openings looks like rates based on school openings. The numbers are not going up. We expected the numbers, we expected the kids to take this stuff home or spread this. We're not seeing a lot of evidence in this. There are different ways of looking at this, but on the whole, this is what the summary of this is going on. But finally, if you, I mentioned this before, is on January 4th, 2021, the Atlantic Monthly, you get 5 free articles a month. I do highly recommend you read this one. The debate about school safety is no longer relevant. Even in places where schools want to reopen, too many teachers are sick or quarantined for classrooms to operate, and the substitutes cannot fill the void. So you have to keep this in mind as we talk about these issues. It's a very real issue, and it's something that we need to pay attention to. So I highly recommend that you go to the Atlantic Monthly for the January 4th article on this by Elliot Haspel. So keep this in mind. So we covered a lot, and I sincerely appreciate this, and I just applaud you for the service that you're providing for kids with disabilities and their parents. Without you, they would not be getting written education, and you are a very, very important part of this. And I am a proud educator, and you're making me proud on a daily basis. So thank you very much. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah for some concluding words here. Okay, and so okay, right.
Geez, good gosh, gentlemen, you always overwhelm us with so many great resources and strategies and ideas. I know that this hour flies by so quickly every month, but thank you so much for sharing, and also taking the time to gather those resources and links and things that we can share back out so folks can go back through later and digest and use them where they can in their own schools and communities. I've already posted it in the chat window. It's also linked in our shared notes doc. As we wrap up this hour, please make sure that whether you do it at this moment, or if you need to run out the door and get somewhere in the hour, take note of that link for the attendance. We leave our attendance form open until midnight because of that. Just as Dr. Bateman and Dr. Smith have both alluded to, we realize that transitioning in and out of Zoom and our workday and our personal life schedule this time is crazy, and we don't want you to feel like you're running late on a family or a professional commitment because you're filling out this form. So as long as you submit your form by midnight tonight, it'll be recorded and your Act 48 credit will be processed. The Q&A section that we've been there have been some wonderful questions that we've been trying to respond to live. That will be kind of cached or recorded, as well as the video recording of today's session, and we'll be sharing out a link to that as well. David Bateman was so kind to remind everyone that we do have virtual kind of office hours. If you'd like to drop in and talk about Seesaw or the learning management system that you're using, or anything else about using technology to support students and your families, we invite you and encourage you to drop into our open office hours, or if that time or day doesn't work out for you, you can reach out to us and schedule a one-on-one Zoom or phone call. That's what we're here for. We have these sessions monthly. If this is the first time you've been able to join us, that Schoology course and that shared notes doc will contain recordings and the wonderful, crazy chock full slides and presentations that Dr. Smith and Dr. Bateman alluded to as well from our past sessions. You can check those out. Our next session is February 11th. And I believe if you want to give a quick sneak peek about one of the topics that we will be discussing, Dr. Bateman and Dr. Smith, you can kind of give that sneak peek now. What's on deck for February?
So I'll start, and David will jump in. Social emotional learning is high at our the focus in terms of the care for our students, not only for ourselves, of course, but for our students. So we're going to focus in on aspects and as well as digital solutions to further facilitate and support social emotional learning. And David?
We're also going to, as many of you all know, in February, it's ESY season, making ESY determinations. So we're going to give recommendations about making ESY determinations for kids that you may not have good data on. So how to actually make that. And we'll be working with Director of Special Education on that one.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We are right at that 4 o'clock for 1 hour time. So we are concluding. We'll stop recording our session.